What's up, Mortgage Coach community? I am coming to you live with Steve Scanlon, Mr. Rewire himself. This is a conversation I always look forward to every time I meet Steve in a coffee shop. Every time we jump on Zoom together, we always have a great headline and a good topic, but it goes a lot of directions. And I know two things for sure. I get better in the process. I come out of it smarter, and I always have fun. So welcome to the Mortgage Coach community, Steve.
Great to be here, brother.
Good to have you. And I think it's a great time for rewiring our mindset. You know, we're recording this in April of 2022. Interest rates have gone up 2% in like 2 months. I'm always, this is going, I've been in this business and I started when rates, it was 1996 and interest rates were 10.25 and it costs like 2.1 points to get a loan. But I'm always shocked that when the market shifts, how fast it shifts. Do you agree with that?
What in terms of fast, in terms of how the market shifts, or how
Yeah,
fast?
just like whenever there's like a change in the market, it's usually not this like gradual thing. It's like boom. Although this is even more violent and even faster than the typical shift.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what we want to talk about is just maximizing your mindset, how to be your best you, and everything that happens in between the years. And so you and I started this conversation in a coffee shop. It's a little over a month ago, I think. And so first of all, why did you want to make this our topic? And that was about a month ago.
Oh, well, I suppose that I guess what I would bring to the table is in Rewire, Dave, and I think you and I have talked about this at some coffee shop at some point. But at Rewire, we have this model that we use, and the model looks like an iceberg. And I think many people over time, you've been to enough workshops and seminars and read books and stuff where the iceberg model is used frequently. Anytime you see an iceberg, somebody's effectively trying to imply what you see on the top of the surface isn't quite what's going on below the surface. You get that, right?
Absolutely.
And so, and that can be used in technology or healthcare. Like I see a lot of iceberg models where someone's trying to imply this thing that we see on top isn't the thing that's going on the bottom. And so, in our iceberg model that we've created, not that I don't think it's that unique as a model, but on the top are actions and results. Actions and results, actions and results. What's underneath this big mountain, underneath the water that we don't see, are thoughts and feelings, which basically make up our, like you said, mindset. And so when we get into a season like this where actions and results are getting, obviously results, if rates go up that fast, people are getting less results, and we're trying to take actions. It From my chair, if we're going to try to do something really really good, let's maybe not focus as much on what's going on above the waterline as what's going on in our mindset right now, because it's probably going to have a greater effect on the drift of the iceberg. How's that for a metaphor?
I like it. I like it. So for any new loan officers tuning in, and you're like, who's this Steve Scanlon guy? One, I've known Steve for over a decade. I was looking on our YouTube channel. I've interviewed him almost a dozen times over the years, but he's a coach, he's a mentor. He runs a large coaching organization that is called Rewire. And the thing I always love about it is that he's focused on your mind, the science of your mind, and how to know more about the science of your mind so you can actually change your actions in a way that's sustainable. So we can spend a lot of time on defining that. But Steve, anything you want to share real quick before we unpack some ideas on how to maximize your mindset?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I would start like anything. I suppose it would start, Dave, with an awareness of it. So I appreciate what you said. And like, I think if people just walked away, even with that little model, right, of the iceberg, like to just be aware, like instead of just thinking, I got to wake up and do these different things and I got to do this and do this and do this, I'm all for doing. And the top of the iceberg matters, but growing in your awareness of how is your mindset. So much of mindset actually revolves around the concept of awareness, right? Like There could be people on right now going, just tell me what to do. I want to go take actions and stuff. And okay, we can do that. I mean, and there's nothing really wrong with that. But today, instead, I want to draw people out to maybe a different awareness of, rather than just tell me what to do, maybe help me think about the way I think. Because,
Metacognition,
yeah, well,
a word I learned from you.
we have a little saying over here, we can't really help people act any differently until we help them think differently. Which, by the way, isn't entirely true, because one of the things that we've noticed about action is you can help people take temporary action. I can hold you accountable, I put that in quotes, to do something by next Friday. If you wanted to sustain the action, we probably have to spend as much, if not more, time on how you're thinking and what your mindset is, because that will be the driver of where the iceberg's going.
Love it. So let's do this. Let's try to net some things out in the next 20-ish minutes. And I know since we talked last, you had mentioned to me that you've done one, thinking on this conversation we're going to have, and two, you had a recent interview for your podcast. Make sure anyone listening that you follow Steve on social media and his podcast. How can people follow you and get your podcast before you
Yeah,
share things?
the podcast is on all the channels. I mean, you can get it on Spotify and Simplecast and certainly iTunes, which is, as it turns out, the 800-pound gorilla of podcasting, right? A lot of places you can get it, and it's called the Insight Interviews, powered by Rewire. The Insight Interviews. If you looked up the Insight Interviews, Dave, I think we've interviewed you once or twice. Jason,
Yeah,
that's one
I
of
know.
our
I've
best.
had the
That's
honor
one of
of
our,
having a couple conversations, and guys, they're unique conversations. So even if they have a guest that you've heard before, the way these guys do their interview, it's different, it's deeper. Everything Steve does is deeper than the norm, which is a compliment, brother. So
every once in a
growth.
while, every once in a while, I just want to go like, "Hey, do you like chocolate? Let's just do something kind of just not so deep, right?"
Yeah, no, let's get deep. So let's talk to mortgage executives, mortgage professionals that want to maximize their mindset, and how do you want to drive that conversation?
Well, again, I wouldn't mind mentioning some of the stuff that I learned from Dr. Sarah through my interview of her. She's a professor at Brown University, and I got to interview her. Maybe the way I would begin to talk about mindset, and I do this sometimes when I'm talking live. I see this slide that I have, Dave, and it's a slide of like, it looks like Darth Vader in a cave. Like it's dark, and you can almost hear that music, dun 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 dun. Dun. The reason I put that slide up is because, as weird as it might sound, maybe we begin a little bit by understanding what blocks a good mindset, which, by the way, isn't the most positive start. You want to start positive and we're going to grow today, which is fine. We can do that too. But quickly you get into maybe we can talk just briefly about what blocks a good mindset. So can we do that real quick?
Yeah, hey, it's
Well,
your time.
again, I don't have the Darth Vader. Maybe when you edit this thing, you can put in that music, but whatever.
I
Um,
think we get it. I think we've all seen that music, and we can visualize it.
so this hopefully won't consume us, because I've noticed in some of the workshops that I've been doing and that my company's been doing, you begin to bring this topic up and it becomes consuming because of how impacting it is on people. So probably, and I would argue this neurobiologically, I would argue it sociologically, psychologically, anthropologically, whatever. Maybe the greatest block to a healthy mindset is worry and anxiety and fear, right? Anytime that we have a response to a triggering event where we worry about something, we increase cortisol. We know that, right? Cortisol is also known as the stress hormone. We increase the stress hormone. When we stay stressed and anxious, we go to sleep with it. We wake up with it. We're worried about, oh my God, what our rates are going to do. We don't have any inventory out there. And these are real things. I get it. But when we stay stressed and worried, we actually impede the part of our brain that we need for a good growth mindset. So that might be a whole other thing that you and I do, Dave, is you can come together and we can talk about, some best practices to actually learn to relate to stress and anxiety differently.
Ooh, yeah, we definitely need to have that
And,
conversation.
and by the way, that's very, very specific and chosen language.
Say that language one more time.
How can we learn to relate to stress and anxiety and fear differently? That is a much different process, a mental process, than telling your group of people, looking at your camera here and looking at the group of people live and saying, here's an idea, just don't worry about stuff. Don't stress. I don't know, I'm sure people who are listening to this might realize this, but telling people who are experiencing stress to not stress is not fruitful. Have you ever had someone stressed in front of you and said, dude, don't stress?
Uh,
Has that person ever said, you know what? Thank you.
no,
What great advice. I was, but because you said that, now I'm not going to. Like, no, what we can invite people to do is learn how to relate to the stress response differently. If we can begin to do that, then you and I can have a meaningful dialogue about a growth mindset and what a mindset might be about how we can be in this world where rates are doing what they're doing, where the economy, where the politics, pick a thing that people are going through, and how do we learn to relate to that differently? And then how can we actually live with a growth mindset, a good mindset through this time?
well, I definitely want to know how to better ask that question because yes, I have told people that are stressed and have anxiety, stop doing that. Why are you doing that? And it has not gone over well. So I would love to get some ideas on just how to step into that. And then obviously, for any of us going through those things, which we all do at one time or another, weekly, if not daily. So I would love to talk about that more. But I know you had teased me earlier with 5 ways of getting a growth, getting into a growth mindset from a science perspective. So that intrigued me. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
You bet. Well, again, from time to time, I suppose at my own company, we put together curriculum, right? We're thinking about things and we put together, but let's be honest, you and I learned about the whole swipe and adapt thing, a little while ago. And so I think maybe I'm just a swiper and adapter. This particular thing didn't really come from me. But instead, it came from an interview that I did for Dr. Emma Sarro. Sarro, I think it's Sarro. And Emma is a professor at Brown
Now,
University.
is that out on your podcast?
No, no, I mean, I just interviewed her last week. And so,
Okay, so
so,
it's
so
coming. It's coming soon. Keep an eye
yeah,
on that.
and as I told you before we started this call, I was like, personally, I was blown away. I hope our audience gets blown away. But again, this is a neuroscientist. This isn't somebody who's just making stuff up. This is a person who has got a PhD in neuroscience and studied some specific things. And I got to ask her some questions, and kind of like you do, I let it unfold. And interestingly, she unfolded it to talk about a growth mindset. Like, I began to ask her some of the things that she's interested in. She was interested in a growth mindset. So I asked her basically, and now maybe I'm giving away the podcast, but basically I said, okay, you're in a class, you're the teacher, which you do, and you're going to teach a class on growth mindset. What is the curriculum? What is the syllabus? What are the key things? And she wasn't prepared for that, which I loved because it was really organic, right? And so she rattled off 5 things, and I'm happy to rattle off those 5 things to you if you'd like.
I would love for you to rattle off those 5 things, and I'm checking her out on LinkedIn right now, and I love just the idea of Neuro Leadership Institute. So
Yeah, she's the head researcher and developer at NLI. And by the way, all of our, not all, many of our coaches and me, I'm a graduate of the Neuro Leadership Institute. They do a whole program called Brain Based Coaching, and that's how I got into her. Because you probably couldn't just call MSRO and say you want to interview her, but she at least talked to me because I was a graduate of the Neuro Leadership Institute.
yeah, well, it sounds amazing, and I can't wait to get some cliff notes. So
Yeah,
walk us through the five things,
yeah,
and then
and
we'll make sure
again,
everybody watches it.
she didn't have this as curriculum. I only pinned her
Yeah,
in the
you pulled
corner,
this
like
out of
you,
an interview, and you got
yeah,
these
like
things.
you do
Yeah,
to me, and so that's what I
yeah.
did to her. So okay, so really quickly, here are the five. Number one, respect cognitive capacity. And what she meant by that is those of us that are burning candles at both ends and whatever, we don't respect cognitive capacity. And when we go over our cognitive capacity, our mindset begins to be less than desirable. So we will become more scarce, right? Because that's the contrast of a growth mindset, Dave, is a scarce mindset. A growth mindset is one where we're defining in the world of what's possible, and a scarce mindset is one that defines the world in what we don't have.
Real quick. So would that be fair to say, don't overwhelm, is the enemy here. We do not want to be overwhelmed, and especially in a market like this where we've got more opportunities than ever, we have more problems than ever, that to begin to get into that growth mindset, we need to like clear our plate. We need to get more focused. We need to say no to the noise and say yes to what matters. And right now, getting your focus and minimizing overwhelm is a top priority if you want to be in a growth mindset.
Yes, and I only yes. The answer is yes. That would be respecting cognitive capacity.
Okay.
But true to what you and I do, because you and I are believers of the truth, right? We shall know the truth, and the truth shall set us free too, right? There might be people listening to that going, yeah, but man, if ever there was a season to be thinking about all these things, and I am worried and I am whatever. And so to just tell people, hey, go and, you know, uh, say no to things and really practice this, like, I want to recognize that it's a difficult season to do that, although crucial, because what we're trying to do is actually still ourselves to the point where the part of our mind that can grow is active. So we can do that when we respect our cognitive capacity. Number one.
Okay. Number
Number
one.
two, she talked about, and I titled this, she talked about using the word yet. And so I called it, I made this up, she didn't say it, the power of yet. I'm not, people that don't have a good mindset say, I can't do this, or this isn't happening. And she said, if we can only get people to use the word yet. I'm no good at this. I can't get this. This hasn't happened yet. She said, when you begin to think in terms of yet, you're giving possibility to the future.
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
a growth mindset, let's say you want to learn a musical instrument. There are so many people that want to learn the guitar or the piano. I'm one of them. And I pick up the guitar and somehow think I should be playing like Eddie Van Halen in 20 minutes. And when
Right.
I naturally don't, as it turns out, so many people go, I can't do that. And she would say a good mindset is, I can't do that yet. And so I think there's, again, you and I can come back and just spend time on the power of what it means to say yet.
Cool. I like that.
Okay. Number three, reflect for learning and not judgment. Sometimes when we look back at things, and she was talking about things, we can be better reflectors. Oh, that went wrong. That went wrong. That didn't do good. I was talking to someone the other day that, people come to me, and I know a lot of coaches, people come to coaches and want to know, I need to make some calls to my database, calls to referral partners. What's the best way to do that? And they're looking, Dave, you and I have heard this for years. You probably do some of this on the mortgage coach. Give them a script. Here's words. Well, that's great. One of the things that I want to encourage people to do is just go make a ton of calls. And by the way, screw half of them up for all I care, because what's happening is your brain is learning. If you make some calls and you kind of blow it and people don't like that, and if provided that you can not judge yourself and learn from it, one of the ways we get better at doing this is actually just doing it a lot, because the brain has this uncanny capacity to go, nope, 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 and we'll finally get to, oh, this is how to do that. But some people don't. I understand that it takes some fortitude to hear no and to hear your own brain do it without judging it, but learning from it. So reflect, she said, reflect for learning, not judgment. That's a way to keep a growth mindset.
That's interesting. All
Okay.
right.
Number four, here's a critical one for all the leaders out there listening or whatever. Choose an environment that reinforces already and supports a growth mindset. In other words, as best you can, be around others who are trying to practice a growth mindset.
That one seems pretty obvious, but also easier said than done.
Right. I mean, again, you and I, we live in a world where we don't promote any one company and we're trying to help everybody, but there are organizations out now that aren't really fostering the culture of a growth mindset. And so I guess I would look at her thing there, because this is what she came up with. I didn't make that up. And she was just saying there is scientific evidence that supports that one way to improve your own growth mindset is be in environments that have a growth mindset. So that's a challenge for the leaders out there. Does your organization foster a growth mindset? If so, how? What are you doing to foster a growth mindset? What are the possibilities, and how are we doing that? So if we're doing that, I think we're increasing how people have a growth mindset.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that one is I have been talking a lot about how important it is for branch managers to do sales meetings right now. And so I would just push everyone. Mortgage is local, and the best, most successful referral based local mortgage professionals, they're hyper personal, they're hyper local, and what happens in your branch matters. So I would just tell every branch manager, and every loan officer that has a branch manager, that's where the magic happens, or that's where the poison happens. And so on a weekly basis, I'm pushing all of you managers to do a 30-minute sales meeting where you're pumping positive energy, you're giving ideas, and you're answering questions. There's a lot of questions in the market today. Make sure you're there as a leader to answer questions of your branch and to create that growth culture within your brand, within your branch. Like, you are responsible for that space for any leader and any loan officer. If you have a branch manager that's not doing that, hey, opportunity for you. Good. You could, just get permission from your branch manager or support, and everybody can lead, guys.
Sure. Yeah, managing up like that. I love it, Dave. You just reminded me. We've got all these metaphors in movies and stuff, like the red pill or the blue pill. Your meeting is either going to be pumping poison or pumping magic. You get to choose.
Yeah, it's true.
That seems a little extreme and dire and draconian, but okay, I'll take it. But yeah, I love that. Let's make some magic happen.
And guys, there's tons of magic in this market. There's I think this is the third best year in mortgage in the past 15 years. We're talking about record strength in the purchase market. Well, yeah, it's hard to get an offer accepted. It's hard to get a listing, but from a volume standpoint, it's still happening. It's still strong. And there's just massive opportunity out there in the market. So,
but back to what you and I are talking about, you can either choose to see that or not see that, and that's what mindset's all about. So I appreciate that fact. It still is a good thing, but we need to adopt and foster this kind of a mindset.
So I want to share a quote that really impacted me. I heard it for the first time. Probably it was before my kids were born. It was 25 years, probably, because my oldest is 23. Sally Huss was the artist. It was in Laguna Beach at one of those like farmers market, and she had this painting, and then she had this quote, and it was two men in a prison cell. One sees the bars, the other sees the stars. And I was like, boom, I always want to be that man that sees the stars. So I would just throw it out. It's a really timely quote. And there's a lot of bars in today's market, and there's a lot of stars in today's market. And the thing is, you get to choose what you obsess over and what you talk about, what you put words around, and what you teach on. So anyways,
Well,
love
again,
that, brother.
that's, any one of these things is another live event for you and I to talk about. That one right there is what is the Neuro Leadership Institute calls it narrative circuitry. Dr. Daniel Siegel in his book Mindsight calls it narrative integration. Tony Robbins calls it neuro-linguistic programming. As it turns out, it matters deeply what we say, not just to the outside world, but to ourselves, right? You want to wake up tomorrow and talk about a lack of inventory and rates went up and whatever. It's not that you're wrong. It just you will end up becoming what you focus on. And then, by the way, the lizard brain will tell you that you're right. But that's a whole nother work. Let me get to the fifth one. And I
Wait,
know
wait,
we
wait.
got,
I'm sorry. By the way, do you have a hard stop? Do you need to get to the fifth and go? Because I just have a question on that.
no.
Okay, because this came up the other day in another interview I did with Hunter Marquardt, and it was all about, hey, are you a cow or a buffalo? You know, and when a storm comes, cow, I think they go against the storm, and a buffalo runs into the storm. Anyways, without getting into all that rabbit trail, we talked about the power of words. Obviously, you know, it's one of the four agreements: use your words impeccably. And I can't remember. I think I read it from what's the guy? Anyways, this thing that when you say a word out loud, it
Yeah.
literally increases the impact like 7x. So your words matter, but when you complain out loud, you've basically 7x'd that, the emotion around that, not only for yourself but for those around you. Any science you have on the difference
Well,
between
I've
saying
not.
bad shit out loud?
Yeah, I've not seen the science on the 7x thing. I suppose it depends on what it is that you're saying.
By the way, it was Trevor Moad in his book, It Takes What It Takes. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, no. The research that this one doctor did at the Neuroleadership Institute had to do with what he called narrative circuitry versus direct experience circuitry. And so, direct experience, Dave, is what's actually happening in the moment. You and I are actually on the phone right now. I'm wearing this green sweater. You're wearing a black t shirt. This is actually happening. We sound like this. We're using the words. It's actually happening. Narrative circuitry are the words that we tell ourselves about what's happening. And after this guy did this longitudinal study, his suggestion was that most people, he suggested, lived about 90% of their lives in narrative circuitry, not direct experience circuitry.
Got it. Got it.
So 90% of our lives isn't what's actually happening, it's what we're telling ourselves is happening. Tomorrow, if somebody reflects on this, man, I heard Dave and Steve talk, well, that guy was pissed, or he was on fire, or I thought that was this. You have the narrative around this. And so, what you said, paying attention to our narratives, not only the words we use out loud to others, I might suggest, because you and I are talking about mindset here, right? How about the inner language? The words we're using internally. I can be super kind to you, Dave, and I can still have an inner dialogue of this guy's an idiot and life is bad and whatever. And I don't, I do think what we say out loud will have a reverberating effect. But I wonder what would happen to our mindset if we began to pay attention to what we're saying internally.
Got it.
But
So,
again, that's an onion that would require a lot of ripping off of a lot of layers.
well, let's save that for our next dialogue, and let's knock out number 5 and then wrap up this round of our dialogue.
Yeah. Well, Emma's her last one, and it might be some surprise to some people, but and again, I didn't prep her for this, but she just said off my cuff, based on the research that I've seen, offer yourself compassion. Be compassionate to others and to yourself. You want a growth mindset, you want a good mindset, learn compassion for yourself and for others. A lot of times we think of compassion, you know, for others, but people walking through this season of life that are tied up in fear and anxiety and knots and stuff, to really learn the power of self compassion is to promote a better mindset.
Powerful. Again, another one of those things that's easy to say, very intellectually logical, but harder to practice and to stay in that mode of compassion. My advice as a sales manager, when I think of that, and how you show up with your clients, how you show up with your partners, uh, it's a season to talk less and listen more, is how I'm going to internalize that. Because when you slow down and you really listen and you're paying attention to other people, you're more likely to connect with them instead of being fired up to share ideas and strategies. At least that's how I'm going to
Yeah.
internalize that one.
Well, my my own coach has taught me that the word compassion is interesting. And if you're an etymologist, right, the study of words, com is a Latin root word, which is the same as con, for anyone that speaks Spanish or Italian or any kind of Latin. Con or com is with, right? Venga con me, come with me in Spanish. Passion in Latin is literally translated as suffering. We kind of messed that up in English when we talk about passion, but compassion is with suffering. When you act compassionately, you be willing to be with others in their suffering. And so acting and with ourselves, that is to say, what's funny, Dave? There are difficult things happening now. Rather than stiff arm them and say, don't think about those things or whatever. No, what if we acted compassionately towards those things, understood them differently, and learned to relate to them differently? That's what we're going for. So two neuroscientific sayings that we need to be aware of is, if we can name it, we can tame it.
Oof, such a good reminder.
Right? So when you feel anxiety and fear and stuff like that, it's not about don't feel that, don't feel that, don't feel that. I try to use, for those of you that like golf, whether you do or you don't, you could intuit this. If you're standing over a par three and there's a lake in front of you and you go, don't hit it in the lake, don't hit it in the lake, don't hit it in the lake, where's that ball going?
In the lake.
If we can name it, we can tame it. Here's the other one. What we resist persists. Oof. So having a growth mindset isn't trying to stiff arm negativity, say it's not there, pretend it's not there. It's being incredibly aware of it and learning to relate to it differently. And that will help you with a growth mindset. Because I think when people say, don't worry and don't stress and we need to do all this stuff, I wonder if it misses the compassionate part of understanding that there's some genuine suffering going on now. When we understand it and name it, we can tame it, we can help other people, and we can be compassionate with it. And by the way, we're not resisting it so that it doesn't persist. How about that?
How about that, brother? Well, hey, I could go for hours with you, and I'm looking forward to doing a part 2 or another part to this series. I'm thinking, this conversation started off as maximizing your mindset, but I think it's 5 keys to having a growth mindset in a crazy world, or in a what would you call today's world? I want to stop using the word crazy, because it's like calling the weather. Like, we live in a world where things are always changing. They're just changing a lot right now.
I don't know, but all of a sudden our call turned into a marketing call. Like, what do you got to name this thing? 5 keys. How about we don't actually name the world at all? How about just 5 keys to a growth mindset?
Boom. 5 keys to a growth, to having a growth mindset with
And
Steve.
my only request of that is that we don't put a definite article at the beginning so we think that we arrogantly have the 5 keys.
Oh yeah, we don't have the 5. Those are just 5 keys.
These are
So
just
just 5
five
keys, just five things.
that there might be someone listening to, and I got 3 others that are better.
Well,
Great. If you
well,
do, please teach us.
well, and by the way, if you got some others that you want to share, put them in comments down below wherever you're watching this. If you got value, give it a like, share it with your mortgage friends. And Steve, what's all the best ways people can learn more about your coaching and follow you?
Yeah, rewireinc.com. It's pretty simple. You can go to our website. You can listen to the Insight interviews through our podcast. You can email me. I always like to get emails if people want to do that. Steve at Rewire Inc.
And
I'm that freak that I'll give you my cell phone number. I mean, I don't know, I probably have 20 some odd coaches now, and there's people all over the country, and I'm trying to run the company, but I love this work that we do. And so if people want to reach out to me directly, but mostly through our website, we have a really, really cool, strong group of people that operate in our company. Would love to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah, and they do a great job. If you have a sales rally coming up, having Steve or one of the coaches as a speaker, it's different. There's a lot of coaches and trainers in the mortgage space, and all of them that are, what I think are some of the best. I know what Steve and Rewire is doing. It's different. There is, it's brain based, science based, behavioral change based, and they understand at their very core that if you want to change what you do, you got to change how you think. And I get tremendous value every time we talk, brother. So thank you for that.
Well, I think this year is going to thank you for helping us promote, Dave. We really appreciate that. I got to go. You got to go. I will end with, this is going to actually be a great year because it's a pivotal year. And for those that actually will adopt a good, healthy growth mindset, you're going to have growth in this year like we weren't able to have in years when all we're trying to do is get loans done. And I know there's some benefit to that. May we grow. May we think of new things. May we have some really crazy creativity, which is going to happen about the way we do it. And when we do that, there's some really wonderful things to come.
Right on. Love that. Have an awesome day, brother. Take care, y'all. Hopefully everybody got a lot of value from this. Take care. This is a wrap.